And dude, when I sat down to take my licensing exam, 160 questions, no, 170 questions, 10 were like uh experimental questions. So you don't even, but you don't know which ones those are. So they're ungraded.
Right.
And there was one out of 170 questions on cyber insurance. So one.
Really?
So you're like, the industry as a whole, at least in this was 2022, I think, the industry as a whole was still not taking cyber insurance that seriously, to the point where it was like, not that they weren't taking it seriously, but it just, the insurance broker agent world still wasn't getting a lot on cyber insurance. Like even the state exams were barely touching on it. So
What do you think
I
was
was
the
looking at this
reason for
wall.
that? What do you think
Um,
was and probably is to some degree? Because I'm sure there's a small
sure. I
subset.
mean, that's, I don't want to waste too much time on the history of cyber insurance, but I mean, 2016, 2017, cyber insurance was still fairly, I mean, cyber insurance has been around probably about 25 years, but 2016, 2017 is when it started to be taken a little seriously. But even then, there weren't there wasn't much of a barrier to entry. So like if you know Wes Spencer, he loves to say getting a cyber insurance policy was like watching Oprah. It would just be under your chair, right? You could just get a policy under your chair. It was cheap. It was like $1,000 or less. You didn't have to have any security controls. You just needed to have a website, revenue numbers, prove that you had a physical address as a business, like things like that. So carriers weren't even really looking for a whole lot of data on your business when they would give you a policy. And
They were just
so,
selling it.
right, it was easy to sell, and but it also was so cheap that there wasn't a whole lot of commission involved. So
Mm.
agents were like, I guess I'll push this, but whatever. So Dan just said market demand, and we can circle back to that because then the pandemic happened. And when the pandemic happened, you had all these businesses go remote. And when all those businesses went remote, all these businesses that had no security because they didn't need it for a cyber policy got hit with cyber attacks. They experienced cyber events, and then they went to file claims, and the insurance carriers lost a ton of money because they had no barriers to entry for policies. They weren't taking on good risks, they were just taking on whatever risks. So when I took my exam in 2020, it was 2022. Yeah, it was kind of at the end of that chaos, not the end, but it was at the kind of cusp of the chaos of COVID times, and all these businesses were getting hit with ransomware attacks, but the market hadn't adjusted yet, and the carriers hadn't necessarily figured out what the plan of action was yet. Like they were still building their actuarial data. So if the carriers weren't there yet, the state exams definitely weren't there yet, because those take even longer to follow suit, right? I mean, the carriers are going to try and adjust on the fly, but the carrier level is like, hey, we take in data and then we change our underwriting requirements on that data over the course of a year or whatever. But you have a state exam, it's like, okay, well, we have to test the questions, and then we have to do this, and we have to do this, and there's a panel, and there's all, it's a lot more red tape to get through to make any adjustments. So that's a partial reason why you probably didn't see a lot of questions about cyber insurance on the exam itself.